All right, guys, it is Tuesday, the 30th of August, 2016, when you will be watching this video because I'm currently in transit, but it is still time for the regressive news. I'm recording this video several days in advance, and that means that this week you will get not one, but two episodes of the regressive news because Independent Man will be doing the full-length regressive news for me a little bit later in the week. So I'm going to do this kind of shorter one where I'm going to focus primarily just on one story, talking about the internet, and talking about the potential end of our freedom of speech on the internet. And it just gets more and more depressing every week with the regressive news. That's why you love it. So President Barack Obama is determined to give away control of the internet within 2 months, one of the worst blunders in the history of national security, economic policy, and the fight for liberty generally. There's only less than 2 months left before this happens. It's been proposed so many times, but this time there doesn't seem to be anybody really standing in the way of this horrific outcome. So what does it mean? Well, in the wake of the embarrassing revelation that the National Security Agency, and NSA, was spying on foreign leaders, the Obama administration announced plans in 2014 to shift control of the Internet Corporation for Assigned Domain Names and Numbers, ICANN, from the US to a multilateral body. There's very good reasons that we enjoy the internet we do because America has control over it and they actually have genuine enshrined freedom of speech in their law, which would not be the case if private corporations and or other governments with, shitty human rights laws got control of it. Under the supervision of Obama crony and Secretary of Commerce Penny Pritzker, a billionaire heiress and campaign bundler with no technological experience, they tend not to. All these people who propose bills that want to control the internet, they don't have a clue how it works. They don't realize as well that if they do this, we'll go to a different internet. Literally. There are other networks. You've got Tor, you've got the deep web. There will be a new internet infrastructure. It's been proposed. It's not impossible that we would basically transition away. And that's what will happen. The technology is going to keep well ahead, as it always has. You look at things like, digital media and music and what Napster did to music. The technology is always moving ahead of the media and the legal system and everything else. And these will be temporary setbacks for a time. My worry is who it criminalizes along the way. So she is a history of failure in the subprime loans industry, this lady. The administration has ignored critics of the plan. They point out that transferring control of domain names to a body like the UN's International Telecommunication Union, ITU, could leave autocratic nations like Russia, China, and even Iran in charge of the world's most important free medium. We all know what the UN is like now. I mean, for God's sake, they'll have two feminists, Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn. They'll entertain them. Okay, it didn't happen that time, but they'll keep trying. They will have these. They'll have these people there, Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian, and they'll have them talking about mean words on the internet, and introducing censorship controls in an attempt to enshrine it in law. So you don't trust the internet to the UN, that's for sure. Breitbart News noted in 2014, U.S. control of domain names has guaranteed freedom of speech and commerce across the internet against the strenuous efforts of countries like China, Iran, to suppress internet traffic and content. In addition, victims of international terror have found potential relief in U.S. courts by suing to seize the domain names of countries like Iran in lieu of direct compensation. Without U.S. control, those victims would have no possible recourse. The Republican-controlled House passed legislation in 2014 to defund the ICANN transfer, and in 2015 to provide Congress with a 30-day period to review it when it happens. Earlier this year, Senator Ted Cruz and Republican Sean Duffy introduced the Protecting Internet Freedom Act to prevent the transfer without congressional approval. But while the bill has been debated, the administration has moved ahead, the Washington Examiner reports, with transfer scheduled October 1st. Disaster if this occurs. Just a little bit more background on this from newstarget.com. An alliance of technology organizations and conservatives are urging Congress to file suit against the Obama administration to block transfer over control of the internet domain names to an international board, claiming that doing so will give authoritarian regimes power to decide who can and cannot have a presence on the web. And like I said before about China and what China's done recently to its journalists who make use of social media, basically everything that they publish has to go through the government first. I wonder why. Can you imagine what this would do to the rest of the Western world. This is where the West is truly pushed downstairs. This was a story from quite a while back in June, but I think it's relevant. The EU has proposed government ID cards to use the internet, and whatever they look like, whether it's a card or whether it's some sort of account that's tied into biometrics, your fingerprint, your iris, or what have you. This is the next step of this. So we've all talked about, look, Twitter censorship, Facebook censorship, YouTube, whatever. It's going to be necessary for new platforms to emerge. Well, when, let's say, for example, our migration to a new platform is successful, what happens next? What they're going to escalate, right? So what are they going to do? Well, then they start cutting you off at the source at your ISP level. So you're given an internet ID. Basically, they want to end anonymity on the internet. Now, I'm for anonymity. I'm not anonymous. My name is Dave Cullen. This is what I look like. But some people want to hide their identity for good reasons. Some because maybe they're afraid of losing their job for saying the things they say, and exploring sensitive political issues, and they don't want to lose friends or family, or like I say, lose their livelihood. And then other people live in countries where if they were exposed, they may face criminal prosecution, or worse, they may be killed. Now, so there's good reason why we want anonymity. This system and systems like it would begin the true Orwellian Big Brother telescreens everywhere, mass surveillance, end of free speech, end of free thought, dystopia we all fear. And it's really born out of the fact that basically how the system will work is that you'll have this ID, and it'll have your name, all your details, where you live, and a history of all your activity. This is what the proposal is. So you'll have these cards. It will be kind of like a 3 strikes you're out system. And if you post something, you won't be able to sign into any of your accounts, any of your social media, your email, your online banking, everything. And their attitude is this. And it's kind of a hard one to argue against. They'll say, well, you can't be anonymous on Facebook. You can't be anonymous on LinkedIn. So why should you be anonymous on Twitter or YouTube or anywhere else or on a forum, right? What have you got to hide? What have you got to hide? This is what they always say. And then they'll say, well, you've got a bank account, don't you? And you do your online banking. That's an online service. You can't be anonymous and have a bank account. We know what the bank knows what your details are. You use an online system to do your online banking. So what's the difference? What's the big deal? And then what'll happen is, so we have this, ICANN being handed over, the potential for ID cards. And so those two things are going to come together. And what you're going to find is someone will make some kind of transgression. You'll say something on your blog or your YouTube video, whatever it is. They know immediately who you are. They know everything about you, and you get a strike. And you get your first strike, and your ISP is told, that's it. Your a login, your license, it's what it is. It's a license to go on the internet, like a license to drive a car. It's been revoked for a week or a month or whatever it is, or 90 days, whatever it happens to be. 3 more of those, speak out against certain issues, speak out 3 times, and you're permanently off the internet. Brave new world that they're proposing, for sure. All of this is to be resisted. You can't solve society's problems if you're not allowed talk about them. They've been trying this for several decades. The technology now to control the web is finally there, and the legal system is now starting to comply with the demands of people with very antithetical views with respect to freedom, democracy, and civil liberty than what the West is supposed to be. What's great about the internet is it still has a little bit of the Wild West about it. I mean, obviously that's a bad thing in some ways, but it's the last place left where there isn't authoritarian levels of government control. But when you have governments working with corporations, like with the bills and the laws that YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Microsoft signed up to a few months back under those new nebulous hate speech rules, largely brought about, I think, to squash and chill any discussion on the migrant crisis, which is something Angela Merkel had been caught on a hot mic with Mark Zuckerberg some time ago talking about. When you have something like that, well then the corporations are no longer, purely private companies. They can do whatever the hell they want. I'm sorry, but this is just pure fascism. This is corporations working with government in tandem. You're telling me they're not all that private anymore, and they're having a very serious stifling control on the digital town square of social media and the internet. And they claim to support free speech, but there's always a caveat. There's always a but after it.